Today's guest is Stephanie Brown. She's a construction technology advisor at Intelligent Construction Opportunities. All right, Stephanie, thank you for coming on the show.
Fantastic. I really appreciate the invite. I think we have a lot of good exchanges to make today.
Absolutely. So your specialty, your background is on the technology side of construction. Were you always sort of in and around technology and construction, or is that a bit more recent?
I would say that's more recent. I come from a family in construction. And so, for sentimental reasons, I would say when the opportunity arose, probably close to 4 years ago, to get back involved in construction directly, and by that, interconnecting and aligning with my previous work experience in technology training, it's kind of brought me to this, which is the creation of my own company, Intelligent Construction Opportunities.
Yeah. So you said sentimental. Walk me through sentimental. Like the family growing up, you
Okay,
around it, or
sentimental. All right. So, my I'm both sides immigrants, but on my mother's side, her father came from Sicily in the early part of last century, and came off the boat holding a rope, thinking that when he got and he landed, he was going to have to find a donkey and certainly need to tie it up. Um, Fast forward to his realization of Toronto and what needed to be put in the way of infrastructure. He specialized in sewer and water mains and became one of Canada's largest sewer and water main contractors. Certainly was responsible for putting a lot of what's under the city here in Toronto as well as across the country. He went on to, get his due and his accolades within his community and certainly within the construction industry. He bought over many, many people from Sicily and his little village, Pagino, where he's from. And all to say that it culminated in his success and his charity. He was recognized by the Pope and was knighted by the Pope for his charitable works. And so for me, it's kind of been inspiring. And on my other side of my family, a Jewish background, and they were in steel, in utilizing older steel, and I believe repurposing it. I know a little less about that, but on that side they had their own steel manufacturing facility and refurbishing of steel. So all in all, that's the sentimentality. It's just knowing that I come from entrepreneurs and builders in their own way that are responsible for infrastructure. And I believe, why we have what we do now today. And that obviously, it's evolved into BIM and all those kinds of things, but it had to start there.
sure. I mean, we used to be involved in the water and wastewater side on the coding side of the business, but the, entrepreneurship is hard enough, but trying to succeed in water and wastewater is, I think, another level. What did you learn from your dad growing up?
I learned from my own father wasn't as successful in business, and he kind
Yeah.
of branched off because he wanted to be the captain of his own ship too. So he went into well, in Yiddish terms, they would call it the schmutta business, but it was basically, repurposing again, rags and materials, so Burlington Mills, for example, he did business with them. They were one of his clients. I just come basically from an entrepreneurial background, and wherever you turned, that was what you did. My grand my his father, he was involved in the steel business a little bit, but then branched off into his own area. And the grandfather on the other side was construction and sewer and water mains through and through.
Yeah. So, um, where are the opportunities when it comes to technology and construction?
Well, I that's why I sort of touched on BIM a little bit, because I think, and I see BIM and I see Revit and I see areas of technology now being able to have to double back on those infrastructures and go and see what's still good and what needs to be ripped up and torn up, and using newer materials and what have you to restore and rejuvenate those, I'll call them initial infrastructures. So technology to me is just learning to have its day in these areas where infrastructure, whether they're bridges or whatever it is, um, where it can be applied to be able to show people where the repairs need to be made or where they have to start from scratch again.
Yeah. So let's just go through different categories. Like, let's call it company size, like contractors. So, what sort of technologies, stacks are useful to smaller, let's say, contractors, medium and large? Where does that all fit in? Because not every technology is applicable to every category or company size.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, I find my clients needing to solve, I'll say, top priorities. So, for example, resource planning. Resource planning. Bridget is well known in workforce planning. It was started here, I believe, initially out of Kitchener, and that's where their founders are from. And there are certainly great aspects of that workforce planning, but I had a particular client that was looking for a schedule, being able to change their schedule on the fly, running many projects all at once, and needing to take certain resources off a job one day and making sure that locally or regionally speaking, they were available to be plopped onto another job. So I went out and, as a matter of fact, went way across the pond and found a resource called Savium, and a terrific resource planning uh, tool. But more than that, I felt that they were very prepared in the areas that I vet all the time, which is to make sure that there's a trial and there's some sort of a hand holding to go through that trial and that sandbox. That there are strict onboarding one-on-ones with a live person for a specific amount of time, and not being handed just videos to onboard people, for example. So anyway, in workforce planning, and then there's other tools out there that can just be project related, and they're great. But again, I tend to find companies, smaller contractors, looking to solve, like, for example, moving from QuickBooks to some version of Sage, for example. I find the smaller contractor running a more tight ship in terms of the project management tools that they want to use. And so again, they stay away from the Procores and they stay away from the Autodesks, because they don't need all that. And as a matter of fact, when it comes to small contractors, it depends how evolved they are. But I will look at anything from Smart Sheets to Google Sheets. It depends on how much they're trying to keep track of, and how many people are on their team, and how many projects they're running at one time.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you assess? Because obviously there's a point where some of the details and stuff are not effective to track. Like, how do you kind of identify? Are people sort of under tracking, or do you occasionally run into people that are just maybe doing too many things?
They're doing too many things, and what I do right away is I try and isolate the top 3 problems that they're having. But first of all, we have to determine, why do you think automating something is going to change the outcome, right? We really have to get down and dirty and just really honest about why do you think tech's going to fix it? I've got one buddy in tech, and he said, "So help me, you give me an app that's got more than 4 clicks, I'm not using it." You know, because obviously it's not the core work that they do, and often it's the tradesperson that has to do the heavy lifting to apply the app to get the data that the contractor thinks he needs and may not even know how to use, consume, and apply down the road. So I kind of was a bit prepared for your question, and I actually have Tats. I've got a technology selection system that basically takes one through 5 major steps to streamline the technology selection. So we start by assessing requirements, and by that I mean, of course, requirements gathering. So as I said, that's like taking a really hard look at, why do you think an app's going to fix that? You know, why should an app fix that? So we really want to peel back, what's going on. Is it a communication problem between the site and the back office? Is it document management problems? You can't ever, find the newest version of a revision. What exactly is happening?
Yeah.
So we really want to isolate those things, and so that's when I talk about requirements gathering. So I'd say, why are you looking? What do you want this automation for? What's it supposed to improve? Who's going to use this system? Who do you think is going to use it? And are there are they ready to onboard with this potential change and the impacts that it's going to make? Because taking on an app implies that you're changing your work process. You just are. And again, if your core work is to hang sheetrock or install electrical boxes or whatever it is, that physical, you know, implementation of whatever it is you're building or restoring, the app has to then go into that workflow.
Yeah, I have to ask though, because I've been in a situation where I've looked for technology, and the person that I was dealing with, helped me realize that it wasn't a technology issue, and we just needed, or I needed, just to have a conversation with a partner. I mean, when you go through your process, how often is it not a technology issue?
I would say maybe 10% of the time. I think, particularly when you're talking about smaller contractors, they're still trying to figure out how to evolve their companies. So they actually don't have basic document management systems in place, which, there's a big difference between throwing everything on a SharePoint portal versus having a document management program that can actually absorb, those digitized documents relevant to a construction job. So I would say I haven't found that it's been very high, but of course you're gonna hit it. That's why you've got to address it right out of the box, you know?
Sure, absolutely. Is there a few other steps you want to cover in your process?
Sure. So again, so we start with assessing and requirements gathering, and that's again a deeper dive based on the business model, but that can then provoke other questions. But you certainly want to know, at least how many people are on staff. You want to know how many. Are you working with self-performing people that are on your payroll versus are these all contractors? It matters. It really, really matters, because apps are designed from a perspective, and generally it can be a perspective of a contractor, it can be from the perspective of an estimator, but it's from somebody's particular role and the way that those software developers perceive that role doing their work. So you can't And I did run into it with one. I thought this one particular client was looking for something that was really borderline back office, but actually some site purview. And so I bought a site guide to, a site application to the table. And within 10 minutes, I was like, uh-oh, wrong track. He's asking questions that are not relevant to the field. So again, it's done from the job role. So I would say, so step one, assessing requirements. Step two is researching those tech options once you isolate all those requirements gathering questions, those basic things. And in between that, you want to establish strategic goals. Like, again, okay, so if we do understand and agree that we're automating something, and yes, you could help with some document control, for example, we want to make sure we're building in goals as we go through this process so that by the end of it, obviously, we're going to realize those goals. So researching tech options, step two. Step three are vendor interviews. Now, what I do in this with intelligent construction opportunities is I do all the heavy lifting. I'm trying to take this whole idea of vetting and screening and
Sure.
interviewing and demoing, or at least pre-demoing. There is a stage where I only do the pre-demos and they have to show me, what they do out of the box. And then what I'm doing after that pre-demo is getting them to customize based on that demo, based on what I've isolated at the top of, or the first step being my requirements gathering, my assessing, so that by the time they come step four, when we're shortlisting and re-demoing, that client of mine is potentially seeing the workflow of
Sure.
that tool in alignment with how they currently are doing their workflow or want to do their workflow in the
Sure,
future.
absolutely, to help optimize because the people are busy. Now, one of the views I really appreciate when we had our original chat was more on you're involved in nonprofit activities or helping the industry activities around the trades. And you
Mhm.
said something along the lines of, and I want you to elaborate, but you said something along the lines of, there's a lot of people that are talking about improving the trades and attracting people, opposed to doing something about it. So walk me through that because that stood out because you actually do things in that direction.
Yes, well, and that's also why I'm involved with the entity Bring Back the Trades, because I believe technology is a piece of the answer. But if I don't really get in there and start jostling with the pain of the shortages, and start to, my favorite word, riff on potential remedies for it, I, uh, I'm not serving my business, and I'm not serving the larger construction community. So when I talk about talking, um, you have to come up with practical applications for making this go away. I mean, without getting into detail, we had a meeting this morning, and um, just by knowing that there's certain shortages in specific trades, just by having venues, whatever those venues are, in our case, they're trade exhibitions, where we actually have vendors show the public what it is that they do in the trades, starts to beat the bushes for people to understand, oh, well, maybe this should be something that my cousin who is unemployed right now, maybe they should look into getting into the trades because this is something he already does naturally or she does naturally, and she might be interested. So what we're trying to do is actively, obviously, bring it out there by telling people about it and whatever, but by actively putting on events and workshops that allows all these disparate individuals within the network to connect and find their way in. And that's why when I said, talk, you, you can't keep talking. You got to kind of, put your stake in the ground and say, okay, I think we could do this. And in the case of myself with Steve Turner from Bring Back the Trades, he basically he personally loathes talking. That's a whole other thing, but he's all about doing. And he basically had this idea. Literally, in within 2 hours of having the idea, he called me and said, "Okay, we're doing this, and here's the date." And it was 8 weeks away, and we literally put on a live exhibition with over 20 vendors, complete with dunk tank, food trucks, food, the whole DJ, and First Robotics was there and doing a demo with the kids. We had some kids there from Dover High School, um, you know, doing their robot thing, and brought a whole community together, all exposed to the public, so that they could see all these trade vendors sweating pipes, and gave the public a chance to,
Sure.
sweat pipe, etc.
Now that I'm guessing that you're doing a few of these, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. There's already almost four on the books for
4
now.
on the books, and I mean, you're a technology, documentation type of person. Are you documenting this process that you're going through so it could be shared and replicated by others? Like, how are you
Yeah.
approaching a scalability?
Well, scalability is exactly what we're doing right now, is scaling it. But we're also Bring Back the Trades has already invested in a trailer, and we are going state to state. We've got, well, again, we've got interest from all over the country, and so that ink isn't dry yet, but we're working on it. So the first place will probably be New York, which will be, somewhat, still isolated to the northeast where it is, and Bring Back the Trades is not yet in Canada. So absolutely, you know, partnering with us, we blueprint this and make this happen. How much of the heavy lifting is actually will actually be done in each territory is determined on the partnership level that we have. But I can tell you that we already made matches for our inaugural one, and I'm telling you, I mean, I was blown away that we, with a very mighty little team, pulled this off, and it was just a complete success. There was just there. I mean, I'm not saying there's not always room for improvement in little things, but overall, the goal was realized. There were 5 vendors that got employees that day, and a bunch of others we don't even know. So,
Yeah. So,
you know,
so I mean, obviously, someone listening to this that wants to get involved, that's one way to actually do something about it and align and benefit. Are there other things that are kind of stepping stones towards that? Maybe they can't go all in. They want to make some improvements. What sort of things have you heard that have been sort of action oriented, results oriented that people can do right off the back?
well, I think the first thing we have to do, kind of all of us, is to foster this idea that, we need architects and engineers to go to 4-year programs to learn how to design and and get ready the plans for infrastructure. But we have to stop thinking that the people that actually do the builds are any less intellectually capable than the engineers and the architects, and dare I say, the developers who know how to wrangle with the bankers and government money. So and we have to stop. We just have to stop it, because it's like, from time immemorial, I mean, you needed tradespeople to do the implementation, no matter how cool or how mathematically capable perhaps other areas of that build were. But that carpenter still has to be every bit as much astute in how he or she implements those plans done by those engineers and those architects. So we have to all decide that it's not an either or, it's an
Hmm.
and it always has been an except that I think for the last 30, 40 years, parents have believed that if a kid graduates from high school and doesn't go to university or college, that they are somewhat at a deficit.
Yeah.
And it's neither right for society nor for their pocketbook because of the cost of education.
Yeah. And how much of that is a marketing, positioning, lobbying component versus, improvement and adding to what's there? Like what is the main action that needs to happen? Is it a big marketing push, or is it like a combination of improving and stuff like that?
I think it's everyone's responsibility. If you have a roof over your head, that when you do LinkedIn posts or you do Facebook posts, I mean, social media is the voice of the day or the platform for the voice of the day. I think that when you put out your stuff, if you are in anywhere in these fields, including manufacturing, I think you need to be able to impart that value and include that message. It doesn't have to be the direct message, but it has to be the indirect message because at the end of the day, we are all in sales. Sales has become a dirty word. That's a whole nother story, and I won't go down that rabbit hole. I have very strong opinions about that. But we are all in sales. And there's nobody on LinkedIn, generally speaking, that's putting out a post because they're not looking for some sort of reciprocity in some way, directly, monetarily, or indirectly. I mean, yes, okay, I don't know, depending on how big people's egos are, followers only go so far. You know what I mean? And it's easy to hit a button and smash a thumbs up button. But where's the depth, where's the value, and what does that look like you can smash all the thumbs up buttons you want on any, you name the platform, but what does that do to any of us directly, indirectly, or as a society 5 and 10 years from now?
Sure. Okay, perfect. Um, is there anything that I did not cover that you wanted to chat about?
I looked at some of your questions and I don't Hmm. I like the one about what common mistakes entrepreneurs and marketers make.
Yeah, tell me about that. I like that question.
I like it too, Tats. I really like it. And I'll tell you why, because I do think that some of us do a poor job of not understanding what it is that we market for,
Mm,
um, that we own and want to grow. We're not holistic enough in our thinking to know that, for example, marketing. You can go and get a marketing degree and you can understand how social media works and you can understand how to do those, I'll say, those functional things of being a marketer. But if you don't have the context for what it is you're marketing, you're regurgitating marketing speak without then providing the value. Again, it
mm,
all comes back to value. You've got to keep drawing in the value of the thing that you're marketing for, the thing that you're selling. What is the value of the thing that you're selling? It's not enough to, okay, I don't know, I'm just going to use my old school, the barometers of cold calling. How many cold calls did you make? How many emails did you send? Instead of understanding that it's better to have 3 or 4 very solid value, and I hate value proposition because, I mean, who knows if they even wanna be propositioned, but if you have value in the thing that you're trying to talk about, it should just it should be story enough, if you know what I mean. You
mm.
shouldn't have to to prove it because somebody reads it, somebody consumes it, and then they decide, is that something they want? Or they wouldn't even bother reading because it wouldn't matter how great the value was. It's just not something that's of interest to them. I mean, how many emails do we all get that some source sad sack sends us, blindly just because, you were able to say, oh, I had 1,500 people on a list.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a combination of permission-based marketing approach with a deep understanding of people's challenges and the value you can bring to them. So
Yeah, and again, I think, if you always begin with the value of trying to make, first of all, having I would even say it's common courtesy. If you have the common courtesy to realize, okay, I want to impart value, for example, about intelligent construction opportunities and what I do, which is evaluate technology on behalf of construction professionals. If I want to impart value, just impart the value. The audience, as long as I haven't, sent this out to, I don't know, banana dealers, people that are completely not interested in what this is, that would be my bad, right? But as long as you have a narrow field and you're just talking about how the value of somebody else doing this on your behalf is then going to allow you to go and do your other priorities, securely knowing that, oh, I could have an application or a system that would help me and somebody else can do the heavy lifting. I don't want to have to talk to vendors and go through all these demos and blah, 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 blah. Not for everybody. But again, if the value is there, the individuals will make the decision, this is of interest to me, or this is not. We've got somebody here that'll do that for me, or whatever.